let's say it's a merger and acquisition between, or excuse me, a merger between two brands. How do you decide what to do with those specific existing brands? I mean, what what steps do you take? Where do you, do you combine both of them into something new? Do you keep one? Do you, how do you, what's that process look like?
Well, I mean, I think it starts with the corporate strategy and what, the goal of the merger or acquisition was to begin with. If it's one large company buying a smaller competitor because they want to expand into new markets, well, depending on going back to evaluating the brand equity and the value, they have to decide whether, how strong that brand equity is and formulate a transition plan. If their corporate strategy is to be, you know, a branded house or a house of brands, they are going to have to manage that transition and really decide what's in the short term and long term best interest of the company to achieve its goals.
And I'd say, Chris, from the standpoint of working with brands, and we've seen, large enterprise brands that have acquired, and part of their strategies to leave the brands because they're so local alone. And so, company A has companies XYZ, ABC, FDD, all that. The challenge is there's a big challenge in managing that type of thing. In the case of two acquisitions, I mean, so Elizabeth's talking about, bringing in two companies together into one. There are strategies where you might want to keep a brand in the marketplace because it's more of a product brand, as opposed to, two corporate brands coming together. If it is two corporate brands, you do have to look at, it's not always the biggest, but you do have to look at which brand is going to represent them in the marketplace for where the market is going. And I think that that's a key component to this, to what Elizabeth alluded to. In most cases, the larger brand has greater equity, but in some cases, a larger brand is buying a smaller brand so that it can move quicker, or it's buying technology that's going to change its business. In that case, I think companies are smart to look at, should we take on the newer brand so that we can grow in a different way, as opposed to carrying this old legacy brand that has baggage with it. And so I think studying that, looking at that based on what Jonathan's talking about, Elizabeth has mentioned here, I think those are key things when you're thinking about, are we renaming? Are we keeping existing names? Are we going to keep multiple brands in the marketplace? And how are those things going to impact the customer view of the product and service? And will it degrade? Will there be some cannibalization? Those kinds of things are all things to be considered.